Hello. In this video, we're going to talk about the compare and contrast model of writing. And there are several reasons why this is an important style or important pattern of writing to get comfortable with. First, compare and contrast writing is oftentimes a standalone college assignment. You may be asked in many of your classes to compare two periods of time, to political figures, to theories, etc. Second, it's important because when we observe the differences and similarities between two topics, it actually helps us understand them more. It's almost like seeing item number one through a lens of item number two, and it helps you to ultimately illustrate or explain your ideas about the first item or topic. Think back again to Malcolm Gladwell's essay about weak tie and strong tie activism. By comparing and contrasting those two terms, we better understand both of them. Student writers sometimes have the misconception that when they are writing, they only use a single pattern, right? We only use the illustrative pattern, or we only use the argument pattern, we only use narration. And of course, by this point, you understand that that's not true. Compare and contrast, just like the other patterns that we've been discussing, can be used as part of a longer argument or expository essay. And so you might think about using comparison contrast essay in your English 101 progress essay or in the writing that you're doing for English 099. Let's take a look at some examples. This example comes from your Rules for Writers textbook, and it is comparing two political figures or two military figures using the compare and contrast model. It reads, and the paragraph begins down here, so Grant and Lee were in complete contrast, representing two diametrically opposed elements of American life. Grant was the modern man emerging beyond him, ready to come on stage with the great age of steel and machinery, of crowded cities and restlessness, burgeoning vitality. Lee might have ridden down from the old age of chivalry, lance in hand, silken banner fluttering over his head. Each man was a perfect champion of his cause, drawing both on his strengths and weaknesses from the people he led. So we're comparing Grant and Lee. We begin first with the qualities of Grant, then we get the qualities of Lee. And what we're really understanding is the main difference between these two figures is that Grant is a more modern man, and Lee is a man that seems to come from another era. Let's take a look at another example. This example also comes from your Rules for Writers textbook, and it compares a modern politician to a historical political figure. We're going to get a comparison between Abraham Lincoln and Barack Obama. Two men, two speeches. The men, both lawyers, both from Illinois, seeking presidency, despite what seemed their crippling connection with extremists. Each was young, by modern standards, for a president. Abraham Lincoln had turned 51 just 5 days before delivering his political speech. Barack Obama was 46 when he gave his. Their political experience was mainly provincial in the Illinois legislature for both of them, and they had received little exposure at the national level. 2 years in the House of Representatives for Lincoln, 4 years in the Senate for Obama. Yet each was seeking his party's nomination against a New York senator of a longer standing and greater prior reputation, Lincoln against Senator William Seward and Obama against Senator Hillary Clinton. So in this case, we're getting both the similarities and the differences between these two figures. But again, we understand Obama's political character more by looking at him in comparison to the historical political figure of Abraham Lincoln. Now that we've taken a look at two examples of compare and contrast paragraphs, let's see if we can think about writing our own. So similar to when we looked at illustrative writing, we're going to think about how to use an outline to create a compare and contrast essay. So just like when writing illustratively, we want to begin with a clear topic sentence. And the topic sentence we have this time is, although presidential candidates Donald Trump and Joe Biden have some similarities, they are more different. So our paragraph is going to focus on the differences instead of the similarities. From here, we want to include our supporting details. So one supporting detail is that they have had different careers. Another supporting details is that they have different policies. And then finally, a closing sentence would maybe just remind the reader what we're talking about, that the candidates are in fact not like one another. Now, and we know, because we've done this in the past, that having a topic sentence and major supporting details is not enough. We need to include minor supporting details that help to illustrate or prove that the major supporting details are in fact true. So it's not enough to say they had different careers. We have to explain the differences between the careers. Well, Trump was a businessman and a reality TV personality, while Biden worked in politics for almost his entire career. We might look at some of their policies. Trump believes in lower taxes for the wealthy, that if we cut taxes on the wealthy, it'll trickle down and improve the economy. He also believes in a strong police and military. Joe Biden, yes, supports the beliefs, but he believes they need reform. He believes that also the wealthy should be taxed more. So we now have some minor supporting details that help to illustrate those major supporting details. When we put a compare and contrast paragraph together, we are still going to use the illustrative and order of importance words to help us create flow or fluency within our paragraph. And so if we add those words, we can read our paragraph and we can begin to see the way in which presenting these two ideas with our illustrative words creates some flow. We'll read it together. Although presidential candidates Donald Trump and Joe Biden have some similarities, they are more different. First, they have had very different careers. For example, Trump has been a businessman and a reality TV personality. Biden has worked in politics his entire career. Next, they have different policies. For instance, Trump believes in low taxes for the wealthy and a strong military and police. Joe Biden supports the police. He believes they need reform. He believes the wealthy should be taxed more. The two candidates are unlike one another. Well, what we've done here is we have used order of importance words in order to introduce our major supporting details. So we see first and next introduce our major supporting details. We've then used those illustrative words like for example and for instance in order to introduce our minor supporting details. But something is still missing. When you read that last sentence, the closing sentence, it's almost like, oh yeah, I forgot. We were talking about what made these individuals different. And that's because we didn't include our compare and contrast transitions. It's another layer of transition that we want to be able to add into the paragraph in order to create unity and coherence. So we have words that mean similarity, and we have words that mean difference. They're here on the screen in front of you. And we're just going to go ahead and add those into our paragraph. You'll notice that they're underlined in this example. Although presidential candidates Donald Trump and Joe Biden have some similarities, they are more different. First, they've had different careers. For example, Trump has been a businessman and a reality TV personality. On the other hand, Biden has worked in politics his entire career. Next, they have different policies. For instance, Trump believes in low taxes for the wealthy and a strong police and military. In contrast, although Joe Biden also supports the police, he believes they need reform. So what you can see is in this example that the addition of the comparison contrast words is emphasizing that these two figures are more different than they are similar, and it helps to create unity between the topic sentence, the closing sentence, and the supporting details. I want to add one more thought though. It is important that when we are writing, that we avoid listing. Sometimes, and we talked about this with our illustrative writing as well, it's important that we don't just list examples, but that we really develop those examples. So I think that we can become even more specific in drilling down and providing some accurate, contrasting, minor supporting details. And so I'm going to start first by just taking a look at our outline. And instead of just saying that Trump is a businessman, I think we can get a little more specific and say what kind of businessman he was. Instead of just saying he was a reality TV personality, I think we can get a little more specific and talk a little bit more about the show, The Apprentice. And I think we can get a little more specific about Joe Biden's career as well. And we're gonna start there. So this final example reads, although presidential candidates Donald Trump and Joe Biden have some similarities, they are more different. First, they have had different careers. For example, Trump has been a businessman and a reality TV personality. Trump owns an international chain of hotels, as well as golf courses and casinos. His most famous property, Trump Tower, is valued at $450 million. His reality TV show, The Apprentice, aired from 2004 to 2017. Unlike Donald Trump, Joe Biden has worked in politics his entire career. After college, Biden worked as a lawyer, but then quickly became involved in politics. In 1972, he became a senator of the state of Delaware, and between 2008 and 2017, he served as the Vice President of the United States. With such very professional backgrounds, the candidates bring very different sets of experience to the job. And so, as you can see from this example, compare and contrast writing also benefits from having very clear and very explicit minor supporting details that help the reader to really understand the differences between the first topic that you were comparing and the second topic that you were comparing. This week in our discussion board post, I'm asking you to think about the topic you wrote illustratively on last week. And I would like you to add a paragraph using the compare and contrast model, comparing that initial topic that you wrote about to another topic that will help the reader to understand and to unpack the original idea you expressed a little bit more. Of course, as usual, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me by email.